Okay. Hello everyone. So I'm Pierre, and today I'm going to talk to you about a few huge investigations we did at the ICIJ. I'm going to explain you how we build this investigation at the top of technology and well, how we coordinate the massive investigative effort on those documents. So first of all, my name is Pierre Romera. I'm French, from Paris. I'm a developer, but I always work in newsroom from the beginning of my career. For a few years, I used to run an agency called Journalism++. We were the biggest agency in Europe for data journalism. And since 2017, I'm the CTO of the ICIJ, so the International Consortium of Investigative Journalism. So, the ICIJ. So, I guess very few of you heard about us. We are not so famous, but our investigations are. So I'm going to start with a small introduction about the organization itself, because it's kind of tricky to understand. So first of all, ICIJ, it's spelled differently in different language. It's very hard to pronounce, and to be honest, I even struggle myself to say it out loud sometimes. So it's a very difficult organization to understand, because it's organized between three groups. The first one is the staff, like me, for instance. We are about 35 journalists, developers, data journalists, data analysts working in many countries. It's a US-based organization, it's an NGO, but most of the staff is all around the world, in Paris, in Madrid, here in Budapest, also in London. So we have people, yeah, in many countries. The other part of the network that is more famous is the network of members. There are around 200 journalists all around the world that are in this same community where they can share documents, intels, contact, whatever they want. Basically, they are investigative journalists, and they can use this network to find new leads. And finally, the third group is the media partners, the media that work with us on specific investigation. Usually, they are partners for the time of the investigation itself, and they bring journalists and resources to help us, dig into the documents and find stories. So what we try to do is provide what we call public service journalism. In other words, it's a journalism that helps you to take part in the democratic debate, to help you to, have better information to take decision when you go to vote. So it means that we are working on systemic issues and, abuse of powers, because we think that's where we can have an impact and where we can change things. Most of our reputation is based on leaks. You probably heard about the Panama Papers, the Paradise Papers, Swiss Leaks, LuxLeaks. But in fact, we know how to do more classical investigations. The thing is, because we worked on those leaks, we had to coordinate a massive effort of many, many, many journalists. And so that's why we kind of developed this expertise, but we also know how to do more classical investigation. Like last year, we did the implant files. It was an investigation on the medical devices industry. And so, yeah, it wasn't leak-based, but it requires also to crunch a lot of data. So as I said, because we worked on many leaks, we had this very specific expertise we had to develop. That's why half of the staff of ICIJ is developers and data analysts, because we needed to gather some very specific expertise to be able to manipulate the huge amount of data and documents we had. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the Paradise Paper and the West Africa leaks, which are based on the same set of documents. This is the most recent investigation we did based on leaks, so that's why I'm talking about it today. And it's you'll see it's how we were able to develop very specific tools. So this investigation started not 1 year ago. It's like 3 years ago in Munich, when Süddeutsche Zeitung come to ICIJ and say, well, we have a new leak. We need your help to be able to use it to do stories. So this leak was huge. It was 13 millions of documents, 1.4 terabytes of data, which is huge. So if you were, working on this investigation, well, you have to spend some time with it. So what we did is we gathered in Munich in March 2017 with all the partners, all the media that were able to work with us in these specific investigations. And until November 2017, we investigate on those documents. During this time lapse, we kind of build very dedicated tool to be able to use those documents. And also, we try to find new data, new stories in all those documents. And finally, after November 2017, we released data connected to these leaks. So we didn't release the document, we released data we extracted from the leak. So we did this data release in 3 phases. First, we released all the offshore companies that were present in the leak from Appleby, the company where we got data from. And then we also publish company registries from some offshore jurisdiction, like Aruba, Bahamas, Barbados, Nevis, etc. So we did that in 2 other phases. So it's a big leak. It's not the biggest list of history. It's the second biggest leak in history. But as you can see, 1.4 terabyte, it's huge. So we really had to find a way to explore that. Just for your information, I put some other leak size in this graph. So as you can see, well, ICIJ already had to handle this kind of huge data, but we try to improve ourselves every day. So even for this one, we try to build new tools. Why do we need dedicated tool? Well, first of all, if you were spending 1 minute on each file, it would be 26 years of reading. So as you can imagine, for the journalists that work with us, it's not an option. So that's why we try to involve as many journalists as possible. And it's also another record we have. For this investigation, we gather close to 400 journalists. There was probably more people involved that are not journalists, like people in the newsroom. It was 95 media outlets working with us, and well, at the end, 95 media publishing stories about this. So how did we do? First, we coordinate between all the continents. We had one coordinator in each continent that was supposed to, help each media on that continent to find stories and know what were happening. Then we helped those partners to keep this investigation secret. As you probably know, when you handle this kind of documents, you have to protect your sources. You have to ensure that the confidentiality of this investigation remains a secret. So what we did is we set up a lot of security standards. First of all, we use GPG to encrypt emails. So it's kind of tricky, when you work with journalists that are not tech-savvy. We had to train them to use this tool. That's the first step. Then we trained them to use tools like Signals to encrypt their own text and phone call. We use some dedicated technology to authenticate them on the platform. I'm going to talk about this later. And finally, we try to build small units during this investigation. So, even if everyone is communicating, if one gets compromised, not the whole platform gets compromised. So GPG. So what we did is, as I said, we trained the journalists to use it to encrypt email, but we went a little bit further with that, and we implemented GPG on every platform we have. So, just like with some popular platform, you can configure your GPG account to receive email from the platform that are encrypted. But what we did is we use a technology called CipherMail that is able to find the GPG key automatically when one of our platforms tries to send an email and encrypt the email automatically. So either we send the email from, I don't know, our document searching platform or our communication platform, it's always encrypted through this gateway. This is the communication platform we use. It's called the iHub. This one is very old. I think we used it for, 5 years or 4 years before moving to another solution. But it's basically our virtual newsroom. On this virtual newsroom, we try to develop one concept that is at the middle of every investigation we do. Is called the radical sharing. So basically, every journalist involved in the investigation has to share everything they found. Every lead, every data, every document, they have to share everything with the other journalists. So we can coordinate, but also we can protect us from censorship. Indeed, as you probably know, if, for instance, a journalist is censored in his or her country, well, if the information has been shared with other journalists in other countries, they can publish the story on their part and, fight censorship. So that's also a way to preserve our journalism independence. But as I said, involving so many journalists, it's kind of complex, and it is a security threat. As you probably know, well, each person on a system can be a source of threat for the systems. And so, well, 400 journalists, it's 400 reasons to be worried about security. So what we try to do during this project is to set up a single sign-on platform. It's called Shemsh. It means sun in Maltese. And it's basically the way we connect to every platform we set up for the partners. To ensure some level of security, we use two-factor authentication based on Google Authenticator or, I don't know, whatever 2FA app you want to use. And we even added a third layer of security, a third factor, which is called client certificate. So you probably use that if you work in a big company. It's an SSL certificate that you have to install on your computer to be able to access some platforms. As I said before, we really need to track and monitor everything that our journalists are doing in the platform. So we set up a lot of features, to control who has access to what and for how long. So still on Shemsh, because we had this single sign-on platform, we were able to, have the same mechanism on every platform we propose to the journalists. As I said, well, the journalists are not security experts. And ICIJ, it's a little bit like Hogwarts, It's a school of magic, like we do amazing things for the journalists, but it's very hard to understand. So what we try to do is to provide them with training and help. That's also why we have in our team some UX researcher and UX designer that help us to build very user-friendly platforms. Another thing we try to do is to facilitate the access to support requests. So just like any big service company, we provide a support desk where the journalists can find the continent they are in, to ask help to the right coordinator, and then we get the tickets. Well, it's very standard to provide support. So as I said, well, this investigation uses a lot of documents. So they are, unstructured documents. If you look in the leak, you have data from Appleby, which is a company based in Bermuda, which provide help to people to set up offshore entities. There is also Asia City Trust, so a smaller company, but that is operating from Singapore. And there was also 19 company registry from offshore jurisdiction, secret jurisdiction, where there is no public record of the company. That's why they are tax haven. If you look more precisely on the leak and on the data, you see that we have a lot of emails. So we had to be able to read those emails. We had a lot of PDF, Word documents, and like internal documents. It's not a huge structured database. It's only raw documents. And if you have a look on those documents, the email, the PDF, they also contained a lot of images. So we needed to be able to read the text on all those images, like scans, passport, ID card, this kind of stuff, to be able to search into those documents. So if you ever did OCR before, you probably know that it's very hard and it takes a lot of computer power. So what we try to do is put all those documents in a platform. So we use AWS for that. We put all those documents on the servers, and then we use a tool, an open source tool that we created that is called Extract, that we're able to distribute the extraction between as many EC2 instances as we wanted, so as many servers as we wanted. And that's how we were able to very quickly index all the data and put it into a search engine. We use, for this project, we use Salar, which is an open source search engine. But once you put all the, all the data, all the raw documents inside the search engine, well, you need to offer to your user a way to explore the documents. You cannot give them access to Salar. As I said, they are very non-tech savvy. So we had to build our own platform for document mining, document search. So for this project and for the other project, we built the Knowledge Center, which is basically a Google, but for the leak we have and where we control everything. One of the key things we offer to our journalists is unlimited access to the document. That's also a way to preserve the independence. So basically, we have one rule is the way we get the document, that's the way we offer them to the journalist. So that way, we ensure that there is no bias in the way we present the data. The only bias that could exist is the one from the source. So with this platform, the Knowledge Center, we try to create dedicated tools that are specifically adapted to this investigation. So for instance, we create what we call the batch searches. So basically, instead of searching one by one every, member of your parliament, you can upload a CSV, and it's doing the research for you and send you the result back. As I said, we also try to have this radical sharing concept. So every batch search the journalists were doing, they could publish it and share it with other journalists. As I said before, we based this extraction on Salar, which is an open source technology. But in fact, open source is everywhere in what we do. We use Apache TK to open many kinds of documents. We use, as I said, Salar to index the data in a search engine. We use Blacklight and Ruby on Rails, which are two Ruby frameworks to build the Knowledge Center. We use Talend, which is an ETL to structure the data we extract from the document. Neo4j to save those data. And finally, Offshore, which is an open source technology to build the form I showed you before. It's very old, it's not very maintained, but I mean, it was good for the time being. So, as I said, we published a lot of data. We make a difference between the unstructured data, the document I just showed to you, and the structured data, the data we are going to publish to the public. So basically, the challenge here was to use all those documents to turn it into a huge database of offshore entities. So those offshore entities are companies in offshore jurisdictions, people operating the companies, and people helping them to operate those companies. So what we did again was to put the document on servers and write a lot of scrapers. They are just small, tiny programs we use Python to do that, that we're able to identify the name of the company in the documents and put them in Neo4j, which is a graph database. So we had this huge database with all the offshore companies in many offshore jurisdictions. We had the people connected to the companies, and we were able to find connection between the dots, thanks to Neo4j and thanks to linker use, which is not open source, but which is a great tool to visualize graph data. And finally, we use Talend, as I said, an ETL to kind of refine the data, fix date, country code, etc. So we had a nice data at the end. As I said, we wanted to use graph database because it was kind of obvious for this kind of investigation where you are investigative hidden connection between people, organization, in different secret jurisdictions. So, there was a lot of documents, there was a lot of people. We needed to find this connection very quickly. Neo4j is very good for that. At the end, we were able to use linker use, this tool I mentioned, to draw those visualization, and then to publish them on a dedicated website, which is called Offshore Leaks Database, which is used every day by lawyers, companies, tax offices to find offshore companies and, well, basically ask people to give the money back. This database is part of what we try to do. We try to provide public service journalism. We try to be not only media, but also a platform so people can find things in our document without giving them access directly to the raw documents. What we try to do is also to help people to understand what is in the document, what story they can find in those, many dots. So that's why we also try to build this kind of visualization. So for instance, here it's called the influencers. It's an investigation about the people around Trump that are mentioned in the documents. And for each person, you have a very specific stories with all the company involved and how they are connected to each other. So for instance, here it's Wilbur Ross. So that's the way he's connected to Kremlin through some offshore jurisdiction. Since this investigation, Wilbur Ross sell his interest in these companies. So what next? Once we have all this information that had a huge impact, what are we going to do to improve our work again? So first of all, you have to understand that most of the stories we published are worldwide story, meaning that we didn't try to focus on a very specific place. We try to have, a big picture of the global scheme that were present in the document. It also means that there is a lot of new stories we could, find in the very same document just by working with local journalists. So one of the next steps after we publish this investigation is also to work with local journalists to find new stories in the documents. That's what we did for the West Africa leaks in West Africa with many West African partners. Also, as I said, sometimes we ask the journalists to send the search term they want to the system using batch searches. But it's not very easy for them to work like that because they never know. They never know what is going to be in the document before they do the search. So what we try to do is to use machine learning to do named entity recognition. So basically, we are able to find organization, people, location, emails, maybe more very soon, and we were able to put them into one single database, so we were able to search the document through the name entities. This project is called Datashare. It's a project we started in 2016, and it's basically an open source technology that at first we created to run name extraction recognition over a huge set of documents. But progressively, Datashare evolved and began its own search engine platform. That's why we build it open source. That's why we use it for many kind of investigations because it's kind of the new knowledge center. So how did we do? Again, we put millions of documents on Amazon AWS, and we use Datashare in combination with Extract, the technology we used before, to distribute the extraction, to recognize the name entity, and to put it into a more active open source search engine that is called Elasticsearch. Again, Elasticsearch is not very user-friendly for journalists, so we try to propose a very specific interface. Because we wanted to share this knowledge we had, because we wanted to share this open source we developed, we also made Datashare as a software that you can run on your own computer with your own documents. So if you already try to do text extraction on many documents, you should probably know that it's very hard. So if you try to run Datashare on your computer, it's going to be hard, but you can try if you want. As I said, we wanted to build this interface. So here is Datashare. It looks, like most search engine. It has a search bar. It has search results, and it allows you to preview the document directly. It's a work-in-progress tool. We still have a big team, to work on this. So that's why it's still in active development, and it gets updates every week, if it's not every day. Datashare is kind of strategic for us because now we migrated all the previous leaks to Datashare, so journalists are able to work on some previous leaks directly with this tool, but also the new investigation we are doing are already present on Datashare. So it's kind of a central tool for us. We built this tool using the microservice architecture. So it's very classical, but basically that's how we did it. First, the text extraction. As I said, we use Extract, the open source technology I mentioned before. We use different name extraction recognition, name entity recognition pipelines. We plan to add more and more pipelines, but the idea is to have the more efficient and accurate named entity extraction possible. We have a queue system based on Redis. We have the authentication through Shemsh, the platform I mentioned before. And we have the user interface, which is a microservices by itself. A thing we are trying to do right now with a researcher team in Switzerland is to build a peer-to-peer protocol to share documents anonymously among the people that have Datashare installed on their own computer. It's kind of hard. We are working on this since 2 years now, and we didn't try to code on this because we wanted to do some user research, and we wanted to ensure that there was a value building that. But it's very promising, and we want to do to do file sharing on our network of investigative journalists. Finally, as I said, we have the iHub, which is this virtual newsroom we have. So we also rebuild it from scratch based on another open source technology called Discourse. So this is the new HighHub. It's working very well. We are very happy with it. And one of the things we want to do in the future is to connect the iHub to Datashare, so you can annotate document directly on Datashare, but it's visible on the iHub. So, maybe you used Discourse before. We want to build a very similar system, but for Datashare. So people will be able to discuss around document in one single place. And that's it. Any questions?
Yes, I believe there are questions. First one, coming from Anonymous. Where do you get funding from?
That's a good question. So as I said, we are an NGO, so it's only based on donations. We have some big foundation that gave us a lot of money. There is Open Society, Adesium, the Sunlight Foundation, which was it was called, sorry, I don't remember the name before. Well, never mind. Sunlight Foundations. And yeah, that's it for the big names. But we are also based on individual donations, so you can give us money if you want.
How do you decide what to type in that search box? How do you uncover interesting topics, Fan?
Okay, so that's the reason why we work with so many journalists. Each journalist involved in this investigation has his or her own expertise on different topics. Most of the time, it's tax evasion for the investigation I just mentioned. And so that's why, well, those journalists know what they are looking for, basically. Most of the time, we also work like a tabloid media. We look for the big names, you know, person of interest in different countries. But each journalist involved has their own responsibility to find to search for the right names. And so the next question is, sorry. Yeah.
How do you build your tech dev team? As developers, what's the best way to help you out in the future?
Well, that's a big challenge, building the team, especially when it's so strategic for the organization, and we are a journalism organization. So, you know, it's hard to be attractive for the developer. They rather go to big tech companies. So what we try to do is basically find people that have a huge interest in journalism and that wanted to help to build a better world. So that's how we find the developers. So now we have, I think, about 10 developers. There is Python, Ruby, Java, JavaScript, well, many different kind of developers that all work on Datashare, the iHub, and the data analysis front.
Tony Prada is wondering, do technology companies like Facebook have a responsibility to filter bad journalism in their newsfeed ranking algorithms?
So it's a little bit out of my scope, but I think they build a tool that is used to, broadcast fake news and fake information, disinformation. And if they are, using this information, they have a responsibility, especially since the users are spending a lot of time on the platforms. So I would say yes, they should try to filter it, or at least give the user the ability to identify what is fake news, disinformation, from what is real information.
Okay. Are you planning on investigating Viktor Orban and company?
So we don't talk about the future or ongoing investigation. But I mean, now you mentioned this guy, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a look on what's going on.
Nice, that's good. Based on what do you select journalists eligible to join the members of the ICIJ?
So it's very simple. We are looking for investigative journalists that have more than 5 years of experience, that work on country we don't have members in, so we look for diversity. And we also look for people that have some kind of, that are recognized in their own country. We want to work with basically famous journalists.
Mm-hmm. Do you have, Jesus, do you have any positive results, e.g. criminals in jail?
Yeah, many people went to jail after this publication, so I don't have the number in mind, but what I can tell is that after the many investigations we did, there was billions of dollars recovered by tax offices. If you take only the Panama Papers, that was 3 years ago, it's 2.5 billion recovered by tax authorities. We know that this number is growing every day. We know that we don't have all the data to measure that. And we also know that one of the most important impact we have is changes in the system. So as you probably know, tax evasion exists because there is secret jurisdictions. And since the beginning of those investigations, well, those secret jurisdictions start to be much less secret. Some of them started to publish company records. There are some countries that publish the list of beneficial owners, so people earning money from some companies, even if they are empty shells. And yeah, so there is change in the laws that go in our direction, and that's a way to measure the impact.
Yeah. Making an impact. So Eric is wondering, you said that you use AWS. Are you not concerned about the security of a public cloud?
Yes, we are. So at the beginning of every investigation, we do a threat modeling. So we try to identify who could be the threat in this investigation. And for the investigation I mentioned, we didn't identify the US government as a threat, nor AWS. So we decided to use it because we have outstanding invoices to manage the data, and because, as you probably know, the security on AWS is pretty strong. Or if you don't have a good security, well, it's very expensive. So yeah, it's a great concern for us. But what we try to do is basically, there are some tools we use only if we handle public data with it. For instance, the Offshore Leaks database, we used Linkeruse to build it. It's proprietary software. But we choose to do that because we knew that we were about to publish the data in the future.
On the topic of security, someone's wondering if you are using Treasureit.
No, we're not. I don't know what it is.
Treasureit's, actually, maybe I shouldn't say this out loud. They have a booth here. Last time I checked, they're an encrypted email service.
Excellent.
But there might be more. Anyway, you might like to look into it. Why was the average file size of these documents so large? 1.4 terabytes and 13 million documents is quite large file sizes. Yeah,
I don't know the average file size, but I know we have some huge mailbox, mbox file, or I don't know the format, I don't remember, but that's huge inbox file that are sometimes 20 gigabytes, so we had a lot of them.
We have time for a couple more. Isn't putting Trump's face on the slide shows how biased this can be? Isn't putting Trump's face on the slide show how biased this can be? Why not Clinton's face?
So, well, the Clintons are not in office in the US. Trump is, and also we put his face because we find connections. We don't put his face because we wanted to, basically. So the reality is we find a lot of people around Trump, not Trump directly, but people around Trump in the document. That's why we choose to show his face. Also, as I said, we worked sometime like a tabloid. Like, we want to publish story that interests people. And well, publishing stories about Trump, it's a way to get people's attention.
That is true. How do you attract such good talent that keeps your platform from being hacked?
Well, as I said before, it's a challenge to hire people in this organization. But the thing is, we are still a very small group of people. So the tech team is 15 people. And we have, I think, two DevOps sysadmin. One is specialized in penetration testing and security. But I don't know. I mean, I guess they like to work with us, but we don't have a secret recipe to keep them.
Okay, maybe one or two more. How long did this whole thing take?
So just for the Paradise paper, it was 10 months. And then for the West Africa leaks, it was 4 months. But it's, as I said, it's a project in the long run. Like, we are using again and again the document because we know that when you have so many documents, well, you're going to find stories for years, even decades. So it's not done.
Last one. Are the ICIJ devs under the same amount of protection/security as the journalists?
Yes, absolutely. Every developer at ICIJ is considered as a journalist. That's the way we protect us.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions here. Thank you very much.